Let's start at the beginning. I always like to start at the beginning. A lot of people think founders just graduate college, start a company. You're from Israel. It's a different track for a lot of people. What was life like pre-entrepreneurship growing up, and when did you know you want to get into this thing called entrepreneurship?
Who thinks here that once you finish college, you're becoming an entrepreneur? I'm not sure. So I don't know if I remember, if anybody here who's an entrepreneur remembers, like when was the first time they wanted to become an entrepreneur. I feel like it's something that's you kind of grow up with, and I had this fire in me the whole time. I'm sure if you do, you know what I mean. Without giving away my age, I feel like I was born into a keyboard. It was like pre-iPad time, and it was like the AT, XT, 286, 386, etc. computers, and I just love tinkering. I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs have in common, is that they're very creative. They like to do things like, all entrepreneurs I talk to, they either write books or they do a lot of music. They 3D print. They do a lot of creative outlets, and I think entrepreneurship is a creative outlet. I feel like I was tinkering through high school with the computer. I asked my parents to send me to a C++ course when I was in 8th grade. When kids were playing basketball, I was learning, programming. And I finished basically the final tests for the computer science programming in high school at 10th grade. So I had basically at 11th and 12th grade, I was kind of bored during the time. So the teacher just gave me the key to the class, and I was like playing LAN games and a bunch of other stuff. So I was always like really interested in computers and creating stuff and being very creative. I don't have like a first memory of when I want to become an entrepreneur, but I think that's how it started. I was like building games, building everything. My friends always made fun of me. I'm sure a lot of people here can relate to that. That every day I have some new idea. It's like you see something, you see some problem, you see something that doesn't work, you see some pain someone has or you, and you're like, there got to be a business here. Who here has this like at least once a week? All right. So I think I knew that that's something that eventually would happen. I was kind of just focused on learning and building everything I can. And I think that's the origin story. It is different in Israel because instead of going to college, you're going to the army. And so I think there's some advantage, in my opinion, is that you get... so I was very technical, right? I started as a programmer, but then the military kind of allowed me to go a different route. So I went to become an officer, and so I started managing people. And so I had this like experience of both being technical and managing people. And somehow, I found myself at 25 with like a 20 people team managing like a $5 million budget. Like, what situation allows you to do that? So I think that also kind of prepared me. And I think from there was an interesting story for me that was maybe the first sign of like entrepreneurship really so I started as a developer, and then I moved into like IT, and then I went to like storage and backup, and then I kind of saw, right now I'm in a cybersecurity space, and I built a cybersecurity company, but I saw this opportunity to move into cybersecurity. And there was a department head that ran the cybersecurity group that really didn't seem to be enjoying his job. Like he wanted to be really like the strategic cybersecurity leader, but not really the one that runs the operation. And so I kind of recognized that, and I felt that's my into cybersecurity. And I went to his boss, so it was like 2 ranks above me, and I said, can I move into cybersecurity and into that role because he wanted to leave that role, and once he moved out, can I take this role? And she said, no, you're not ready. So a couple of months went by, and I'm really eager to do that. And I know this is not directly related to Siemplify, but I think this is an interesting backstory. So I kept pushing. I went again, can I take this role? And it's like, no, you're not ready. So I talked to the manager himself, and I told him, like, look, you don't like doing this operational stuff. Do you mind I do it? And I just took a table, put it in his room, and I said, I'm the deputy. And he was thrilled. So he's like, okay, all this, all this shit that I want to do, you can do it. And so I did it for 6 months. And this team, this group became, it was one of the groups that nobody in the unit really wanted to get to. It was like really the one that's almost like impeding business, It's
What
like,
was the role of that group?
so the role was basically being in charge of cybersecurity for the unit. So it had both application security, making sure that everything that's built is secure, and like infrastructure security, making sure that the infrastructure, the networks, the computers, they're all secure. So one was more programming security, and the other one was like infrastructure security. But everything that the other groups in the unit were building software, and this team was basically like the business blocker. Everything you had to go through this team. They had to approve everything. They had to like securely design everything. It was really impeding business. And I came there and I kind of changed the more like the concept and the perception. And I was trying to think, how can you enable business while you're doing the security? And also the people in the group started enjoying it much more, and it became, I think in 6 months, it became like the group that people really wanted to move into and join, and other groups really liked how this organization actually helps them with their business and not just impedes them. Anyway, so 6 months passed, and then the group lead basically said, okay, you're ready. And the other guy moved up to become more strategic, and I took the role for running this whole organization. And this really senior person told me afterwards that the acronym for my name in Hebrew, I'll say it in Hebrew. Amos is like, there's 4 letters, and she told me, it's like itui mazal vesus. It means you need timing, luck, and horse, which is basically like the push. Like you have to have the timing, you have to be somewhat lucky, and you have to push. And you did all these things, and that's kind of stuck with me since then. I think that's kind of the beginning origin of my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, have you ever heard the concept, how you do one thing is how you do everything? So it sounds like even before entrepreneurshiphood, you were thinking in that way. It's actually like embedded in the meaning of your name.
Yeah, so I didn't know that acronym before, but I like telling that story, and I think it's also true. Like you can't win the lottery if you don't fill a ticket, and you need to just keep pushing and keep trying, do it in a respectable way. But I think that's the path.
Do you think it was innate? And I just want to double click on that for 1 second. Like the moment you spoke to the boss to ask, because that is a trend in a lot of these conversations. An earlier memory, pre-business, where whether in school you took some sort of leap. Do you think when you brought that up to the woman that was in charge, did that take you a few weeks to garner up the courage? Was it just automated in you? You're just like, I'm just going to do this, and it was sort of second nature?
I think it's something that it's a muscle that you need to build. It's definitely not innate. I mean, I remember that probably a couple of years, maybe even 3-4 years before that, maybe 2.5 years before that, to be exact, I was supposed to go. I went to officer's course, but the day before, I went to the leader that was in charge of it, of sending the people there from the unit, and obviously I had I took a slot that someone could go, and I said, I got cold feet. I don't want to go. And I was really getting afraid. Maybe that's the word. And he said, no, you're going to go. And I was like, no, I really don't want to go. Like, send someone else. Like, I can't send someone else. It's already too late. We're going to lose the slot, basically. You're going to screw us and someone else who could have gone. You're going. And I think that also changed something in me. I went, and obviously I thanked him afterwards for sending me. But I think this feeling that you're out of your comfort zone is something it's very natural to be afraid of, but I like to think about it every time I'm out of my comfort zone. You start getting like more heart rate, going up. I like to tell myself, this is a sign I'm alive. I like that feeling. And so if every time I have this situation where I need to push myself a little bit, I just remind myself that this is actually good for you to be out of your comfort zone, and that's the areas where you grow. Get some heart rate going and remind yourself you're alive. That's how I do it.
Yeah. How much do you think you were in the IDF for 5 years?
Almost 10.
Almost 10 years. How much do you think that shaped the rest of your growth, your trajectory?
Quite a bit. Like I said before, both giving you the experience that I think otherwise it's very hard to get, managing a big team, moving between different departments, managing a big budget, and working really, really closely with customers. It's a different kind of customers, which is why once I finished my service, I went to work at a company because I wanted to see what it's like to actually run a business and have commercials that you need to, you need to have like unit economics, you need to have partners, you need to have different kind of customers. We have basically our customers were inside the military. So, but it allowed me to learn a lot, both technically, because I think the origins for what later became the company that I started was a problem that I actually faced in my job, in my role. Like we were building a security operations team, which is basically like when you think about it, like if any large organization has on average, and we get to the pitch of Siemplify later, but just as a backstory, every large organization, like banks, airlines, they have a lot of security systems. On average, like 27 systems. They have like endpoint security, network security, access control, data leakage, web application, mobile security, like a bunch of tools. Each one is focused on some part of the enterprise. And all of these tools, they send alerts. It's like when you're trying to protect a house, there's like a space detector there, there's a detector on the door, there's one on the window that, if it opens, it sends some alert. Now think about a skyscraper with a lot of these sensors. All of these alerts go to some team that monitors them 24/7, and it's supposed to say, this is something going on here, there's a threat, there's a hacker, there's an attack. So obviously we had a lot of security systems, we had a 24/7 team, we call it security operation. We had to build an operation that will be able to respond to all these threats. So I kind of experienced that, and that was just the first time I got exposed to this problem, and later on it will become the problem that we decided to build a platform to solve.
It's a lot of sensors in a skyscraper, I can imagine, and managing the systems to create the security would be a big challenge. You go from having a job facing this problem, so I call it like, wouldn't it be cool if moment? Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could create a system that manages all these in like one ecosystem? And what was that moment for you? And then what did you do with that moment? Did you sit on it for the next 10 years, or did you meet the right person? Like I believe you had a co-founding team. Tell me that like origin story of the company.
So funnily enough, I didn't immediately start a company to solve this problem. I think I felt it, but it wasn't like I did a lot of other things, and I was still in the military, so I couldn't just leave and start a company. I was actually trying on the side, to do some things. So I like I said, I always try to build things, and I'm sure you all have the same experience where everybody's an entrepreneur, constantly comes up with these ideas. So I had a friend, after hours, we would build different applications, and none of them actually really took off, especially because we were, during the military, couldn't really start a business, but we tried to do a bunch of things. But the problem with the security operations kind of stayed in the back for a while. And when I finished my service, I took a break because I knew that if I'm going to start something, I won't have time to have some time off. So I took 6 months, went backpacking in South America. That was fun, very recommended. And when I came back, I thought I need to get some experience with like real customers outside of the military, in Israel, outside of Israel, and see the real world before I can start a company. Like I knew that at some point I'll start a company, but I had to have more real life experience. That's how I felt. I don't think it's necessary, it's a mandatory thing, but I wanted to get this experience. And so I went to work at a company, and incidentally, I mean, obviously, I went to a cybersecurity group there, and incidentally, one of the projects that we were building that I was involved in, I was like one of the leaders in this project, was building a training simulator for security operation teams. So I kind of found myself in a very similar area, but I'm not solving the pain that I had for actually running it, but we're training the team that's supposed to do this triage and investigation and response. So we build a training simulator that kind of emulates a large organization environment with all the different controls, and we set up training facilities around the world. And it was like US, Brazil, London, like the UK, Singapore, Australia. And basically, like I had 2.5, 3 years where I was just flying around, training teams and training the trainers, and also training the security operation teams that would come from different organizations, banks, ministries of defenses, to these facilities to train. And that was my biggest aha moment for like, there is a big problem here, because I saw this myself, and then I trained probably 50, 60 different teams that I saw around the world, and they had the same issue. You know, we were running attacks at this network, and they had to figure out what's really working, what's really a threat, what's not, connecting the pieces, and then responding to it, and also even learning how to communicate between themselves because they're like a team of a bunch of people in shifts. So anyway, that's when it hit me that there's a problem here. We're calling this a security operation, but it's not run as an operation, like it's an enterprise operation. Like if you look at any other enterprise operations or operations in enterprise, you have things like sales operations, right? You don't just hire salespeople and expect them to, tell them, hey, sell, here is your quota, go, good luck. You build a process. There's like different stages for an opportunity. There's different KPIs that you measure. There's some data that you need to capture. You have a process, and usually you have a platform to support this process, like Salesforce. And marketing, usually also you have a whole process, and you have a platform to support it. And HR has a process and a platform, like a Workday or something. And security operations just had hundreds of different products, and there was no process for the operation, and there was no platform to support this process. So for me, it was like, that was the aha moment for, there is a big pain, that I knew it personally, and I saw it training all these people, and I knew that there's a pain, and there's a big enterprise gap that needs to be filled, and there was no really good solution. So that was, for me, that was the aha moment. One of my co-founders I met at that organization. Again, going back to this like entrepreneurial mindset that every day I had some other idea, he would be my, how do you call it, the bouncing board, for ideas. Every time I would come to his room and I say, Gary, I have an idea. And we're like, okay, right, let's start sketching it on the whiteboard. And like usually he would shoot these ideas down. And it's good because you want someone who's like really, really frank with you. This is like, technically it's not going to work. Commercially it's not going to work. The pain is not big, whatever. Usually he would shut these ideas down. And this time I came back from a customer training in Singapore, I think, and so I'm like, Gary, I have an idea. And this time I think there's a pain, business, whatever, and we're trying to shoot it down for a couple hours, and we're like, maybe there's something here.
How many times do you think you were at that whiteboard with Gary?
Hundreds.
100.
Probably, yeah.
100 ideas. 100
I
ideas.
mean,
all
at
shot
least
down.
at least 50. I don't know, but I think
Yeah.
a lot.
50 to over a lot. Yeah, probably triple digits.
Yeah.
And then you came up with a concept. You didn't shoot it down. And then from there, from that moment, that aha moment where you're at the whiteboard, you're like, I think we have something here. There's a market, there's a need, there's an opportunity. Where do you go from there?
So I think this is a unique situation because if you leave the pain yourself, I think you're in a good situation, like in a good place to solve this problem. It doesn't mean that if you didn't leave this problem yourself, you can't solve it. Like for example, there's a lot of founders and a very, very successful VCs. One of them that I'm an LP in, that they're doing like a sunrise process where you don't come with a problem that you already are familiar with. Maybe you're familiar with the space, and you're meeting a lot of customers, and you're asking a lot of questions, and you're trying to see to really in these interviews see if someone has like a visceral reaction to a situation or a problem that they have, because you really need to have real pain. A lot of times I do a lot of angel investing now, and I see founder teams, and they come and they tell me the story that typically they come up with some product or some technology, and they're in love with the technology, but I'm trying to understand what is the pain that you're solving for the customer, and it's not very clear. It's like, yeah, the tool, it's technology, it can do this and this and that, and it can help the customer do this, but what is the pain? So I think we can probably talk about more about that, but I think I was in a situation where I really felt the pain myself, so I could really relate to it. And then there was another one of these uncomfortable moments, because I worked at a company, I had a nice job, I had a company car, all these things, and I had a few opportunities. I got an offer to join some company. Actually, I took the offer. I signed some offer to join some other company. It was a really good offer. And I was coming back from the Singapore customer, and I thought, there's a great business to start there, so I think maybe I'll start a business in Singapore. And as I signed up the offer for the other company, and I put my notice, I got a counter from the company I was working on, which was great. So I had these 3 great options. And I remember being at a customer in the UK, and I was chatting with Gary and my other co-founder, Alon, shout out. And I was like, okay, we have to make a decision. I have this option, this option, this option, and the 4th option is neither of these. Let's just start a company, because there's something here that we talked about, and we think there's a potential here. And I remember somehow I got an email from the guy who ran the Microsoft Ventures Accelerator. I didn't know the guy. I have no idea how he got my email. I only talked to him after the exit to ask. But at that point, I just got an email saying hey, I heard you're talking to investors. I didn't know any investor at that point. I didn't know what valuation means. But it's I heard you're talking to some investors. We're starting an accelerator that's focused on cybersecurity. Do you want to apply? I was like, shit, this is an omen. I have to do something.
Yeah.
So we talked, the 3 founders, and I said, you know what? We have to make a decision now, because we're going to go do the interviews for this accelerator, etc. But we're only going to know whether we got accepted after the point of which you guys should have given notice already. Basically, there's a time frame that you have to give a notice a month in advance. In this company in Israel, there's some laws anyway. So they're okay, let's just put our notice in and hope for the best. I mean, if we get it, great. If we don't, we'll start a company anyway.
I love talking about impossible moments. There's a point in time where you have 3 offers on the table. You're choosing between the 3 offers. You're with your co-founders, and then this email comes in, from a person you don't know. You're not currently circulating this idea, and that moment, because you choose to lean in and take it, changes the course of your life. First of all, how is that even possible, right? That's this magic moment that we talk about, that we see and feel, and my belief is the more you believe in those magical moments, the more they happen. High five energy, I call it. That's what I get, indeed. What do you take from that? Do you ever meditate on that? Because we can move on from that, but that point in time, I think, is just so important.
Yeah.
Where does the universe come into play?
So I think it's not necessarily that it's a miracle, but like you said, you present yourself to this moment, right? So I knew that I want to start a company. We were talking about something. We decided that there's a real business here. It was in the back of my head, that we want to do it. I just needed something. So I was basically looking for signs. If not that, maybe something else would have happened. I don't know, right? It's a butterfly effect at this point.
Totally, yeah.
But this particular moment was my moment to go on this route. It could have been something else. I was really. It might have happened anyway. I don't know. But after that, we had a quick Skype back then call, and we decided, okay, let's do it. They both put their offers. it was like the end of the week, like the last day of the week, where the beginning of the next week, I had to start working in this new company, and I already met some of their customers. They wanted me to do some, pre-onboarding and so on. And I called the boss, and I was like, "Listen, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to try to chase after this dream." And he was furious. He was like, "I'm gonna, Anyway, he was furious. But I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So we did the interviews, we got accepted, and that's really the beginning of it.
And did you decide, in this accelerator, was it the same idea that you had the whiteboard that you end up presenting accelerator, or did it evolve over the first few months?
I think it always evolves. I think it's important not to be married to the idea and to the solution that you have, but to keep exploring the problem. So we started with a certain idea to solve the pain, because we knew the pain. The specific solution of how we solve the pain evolved. We started with like something very, very complicated of how we think we can solve this problem, and we started building a prototype, and I think also it's important to iterate and build prototype quickly. So we built some prototype, we went to customers, and very quickly we understood that we're trying to solve, we're trying to build a roof, but there's no foundations to the house. Like, organizations were so far back with how they're trying to solve this problem, they didn't even have some of the basics. So we were rolling back a little bit and said, okay, we're going to solve this problem, but we're going to start here. And I think that's how you stay close to the customers. You try to get as much feedback as possible. You get it in their hands, even if it's at first it could be a sketch, to tell them, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to do for you. This is how it's going to solve this pain. What do you think? Then you start prototyping it. If it works, today it's much easier. With AI, you can iterate so fast on these things. We would like somehow build it in PowerPoints to show the customer and get some feedback. What was your question again?
Well, to harp on the Microsoft, for example, because a lot of people have ideas, and there's that moment earlier in the career is like, do you do an accelerator or not? How important was the accelerator experience for your journey?
So that also reminded me the question on fixation on the idea, and whether we knew that that's going to solve the problem. I think that was your question. So
is the original idea what it evolved to be, but also in the accelerator process that help you hone in on what you were actually doing.
So just to conclude on the previous one, it changed. And I think everybody that goes into this has to assume it's going to change and want to change it and learn from customers what their problem is and adjust the solution. And so many times I'm seeing founders come and like they're forcing the solution on the problem rather than, or did I say it correctly? They're forcing the problem on the solution rather than adjusting the solution for the problem.
You're a solution looking for a problem, which is like so many startups.
Yeah, exactly. You can start with that, but I think it's more important is to get out there, iterate. It can be a little bit messy. It's okay, in my opinion. It's better to move quickly. The advantage that startups have over corporates with huge teams is speed. So you move fast, you get in front of customers, you get feedback, you iterate, and I think that's how you solve pains fast.
So after the accelerator, did you decide to sort of bootstrap this for the next few years, or did you go the venture money route?
Yeah, so then on the accelerator, I don't think it's mandatory. This one was just happened to be there, and it helped us. They didn't take any equity, which was great. Later on, I learned why, but it's a funny anecdote because they sent us, after a couple of years, they took some of the more successful startups and sent them to Microsoft headquarters to meet with Satya. So we sat there in a room, and we asked a bunch of questions. He explained why was this accelerator even created? And the answer was because obviously Microsoft was really strong with enterprise, but not so much with startups. So every startup that started was running on AWS. They wanted Azure to become more startup friendly and kind of in this ecosystem. So they wanted to run companies through this accelerator and have them be successful and have them run on Azure. So that was the goal, not to get equity from startups, which is a great idea. I mean, we ended up on AWS and acquired by Google, so that didn't work for us. But it was very helpful for us, and I'm grateful for the help that they gave us. Because when we came to the accelerator, we knew nothing about fundraising and nothing about building a company. So if you can immerse yourself with people, other entrepreneurs, mentors, they had some mentorship program, ecosystem. They helped us understand what are the basics, fundamentals, even like how to construct a company, how to do founders agreement, how to talk to investors, all this basic, even like how to create your pitch and hone your messaging. This is something that they helped us create. It was just like a 4 months, mostly like an office space they gave us to start working in. And they introduced us to some investors. I mean, nothing came out of that, but I think that was a good launching point for us into this space.
And when did you go for your first investment round? How long after that? What sort of traction did you get? And then what was your first round? And how do you meet that first investor?
It took probably about 6 months of bootstrapping it in this accelerator environment. So to me, it was easier because, I had some savings and so on. I had my co-founders, one of them had 2 girls, 2 daughters, and like the third on the way, so it was like more difficult to to stomach that time. But he's it's crazy. We have pictures of him working on his laptop in the delivery room, with his wife giving birth, and he's
whatever it takes, right?
Programming. So we were there for 6 months. Then we started talking to investors. We actually got the introduction to the investor that would end up leading the seed round through a customer. So we went to meet a customer. I went to meet a customer, and he said, there's this guy that you should meet. He's looking to invest in some Israeli cyber companies. I met him at some hotel, and he ended up becoming my best investor. Like I didn't know anybody, no investors, no customers. I mean, this is actually something that I tell a lot of founders and entrepreneurs that I talk to when they're looking to raise their seed. I think it's very important to choose an investor that has 3 things. One is a lot of relationship that they can open doors for you in the ecosystem and the environment that you're building. 2, they have to be very founder friendly. And I forgot the third one, but they have to be.
There are 2 things you tell
There are
founders.
2 things you have to tell founders. They have to, hopefully they're on your side and they're not blocking they're not putting sticks in your wheels, which is many times it happens. You don't want just money from investors. You want someone who's by your side, because it's going to be going to a lot of ups, but a lot of downs. And you need someone who can go through these downs with you. And you need someone who can open a lot of doors and can make introductions and know customers. I wouldn't count on an investor to do the work for you. I mean, they probably add marginal value. But I'm just looking at our situation at the beginning, where we had no contact with nobody apart from this accelerator. But this accelerator was just like just giving us some basics. Like I moved to New York. We get to that in a second. A year after we started, knowing nobody, no customers, no employees, no investors, nobody. And I think it would have been great, like I'm seeing other startups now that I'm involved with, that they have so many introductions to customers and other employees and potential VPs of sales and so on. I think it can save a significant amount of time. Both, and the third one, that's the mentorship, because it allows you to if you have someone who was already in this path, can help you understand how to build a business. Because we didn't know how to build a business. And I think we wasted, learning about 2 years, how to build a business, how to build go-to-market, how to create channel to reach this target market, how to commercialize, how to decide on pricing models, all these things, to the degree that you can surround yourself with people who can help you. Obviously, it's your decision, and you're going to have to make some mistakes and go the path yourself. But if you can surround yourself with people who can help direct you, I think it's a huge accelerator to your journey.
Yeah, I talk about this in the book. I call it the mind group, the people that you surround yourself with, because so many entrepreneurs and founders, when they're starting out, they just they wing it. You start a company, you start going after customers, and you're sort of in your own little tunnel. But there is somebody out there that's already done the thing that you're trying to do. And there's probably a lot of people that have already done the thing that you're trying to do. And it might not be the same exact thing, but parallels. And if you could bring those people into your ecosystem and build trust and build advisory relationships and make mentors out of them, your path will be a lot easier. And the way to get that is just talking about it. You were talking about it to that customer that you were talking to at some point probably was told that you're raising money because, I'm just guessing, or they inferred it. And you don't really get introductions and you don't build your network unless you're talking about it all the time to everybody. So if you're looking for new customers, if you're looking for fundraising and you're looking for introductions to investors, every cocktail party, every KINN event, every time you go to Starbucks and you chat up with someone who's getting coffee next to you, you bring it up and you just have no idea where that next intro is going to come from. And that I always like to say, you're one intro away from changing your life. It's always one conversation. And that was like, it's the email that you got in that miraculous moment. It's the customer is like, oh, who you should talk to? There's an angel. I love that. Like, who you should talk to? You should get those, 50 times a month, who you should talk to. But it's up to you to get people to be open to that.
So this customer actually became an investor too. So he was an angel investor. And I think what happened here, he basically, I pitched him the product and I showed him a demo, and he had the problem, right? So he thought, this is a solution for a problem that I have, that I can stand behind. He introduced me to this investor. It was like a sort of like a micro VC, but he wanted to join as an angel. So that was also validation. Once you have a customer who wants to put personal money in the company, that was a big validation moment for us that we're on the right path. And then that was just like some Israeli customer. It's not a huge market. The cookie cutter cybersecurity, or generally, Israeli companies, you have R&D in Tel Aviv, and then you move to build operations in the US. So we raised seed round from this group about 6 months into it, and then within 4 or 5 months, I was already in New York. Moved to New York to build the headquarters there. Build go-to-market, marketing, sales, operations, sales, customer success, all that forward-looking organization. And then, the more customers we met, the more validation we received, and that's why we understood that we're onto something real.
So you built this company. They rose to about 200 employees, raised about $58 million total. Over how many years was that journey?
It used to be a lot.
Yeah.
Now it's like nothing. So the company was exactly 7 years from start to acquisition, which I think is the average. And so we probably in the first 6 years is the time that we raised. I was actually working on raising a Series D. So we had a seed A, B, C round totaling $58 million. And I was during my Series D fundraising that the company got acquired. So that's part of the acquisition process story in and of itself.
Yeah. Was it straight up and to the right for those 6 years, or a wild, curvy?
When is it straight and up and to the right? That's what the spreadsheet and the PowerPoints look like.
Exactly.
That's the story that
Take
you
note.
tell. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of moment. I mean, everybody knows it's a roller coaster, and I think everybody goes during this path needs to accept it and know that it's going to be, how is Elon describe it, like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. I think, right? That's what he said.
I've never heard that, but I love
Really?
that.
I think he said that. I mean, it's very painful. It's a lot of, I don't need to tell anybody here, a lot of hard work, no weekends. Like, I think, my wife sits here, and we, didn't go on vacation for like almost 7 years, maybe twice. So it's a lot of pain, a lot of hard work. And where was I going with this?
Chewing glass and smiling.
Chewing glass and staring into the abyss.
And smiling too. You got to smile for the investors. And just one thing that you said, and this is another important note, is that on the outside, especially when we read these articles about the company, like the graphs, they all look up and to the right. The PR, the PowerPoint decks, they all look at like these amazing stories. But behind the scenes,
I mean, you have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I mean, optimistic, that's kind of your job as a founder, as a CEO. You have to be sure the company is going to succeed, and you have to be that person that when everybody is struggling, you're struggling too, but you have to put on this presentation of like, we're going to make it, because you have to push and you have to fake until you make it and kind of push through. But you also need to be realistic, of course. I'm not saying that you can fix something that's unfixable, but that's the attitude. And you constantly have to be positive. And I think these graphs, sometimes we joke about it a lot when we see some decks from teams raising money, forecasting 3, 4, 5 years ahead, how we're doing like 100 million and just doubling the AR every year, in the spreadsheet. There's not so much sense going into it. But, in reality, it goes something like this, but you have to have the plan, and you have to be realistic with a pinch of optimism in your plan. I think also in this case, it's always better to beat the plan. So you have to have a plan that you're happy about, that the board is happy about, but it doesn't have to impress anybody. It has to be good for the board and for and for investors, but you don't have to say, "Oh, I'm going to be 4x next year." It's great if you can do 4x, but don't commit to it. I mean, we had a situation where we hired a VP of sales, and we gave that a person and the team a target that's way too high than what we thought we're going to do. I think it was like 2.5x or something. Just like an 80% growth or maybe 2x would have been a great goal, which would have been amazing to overachieve. Instead of that, we just gave this overachievement as a goal. We missed it. We still had an amazing outcome, like maybe like a 2x year, but we were at like 70% of our targets. So people's bonuses got affected. The person's bonus got affected. He didn't have a great outcome, left to go somewhere else. And it starts like this whole chain reaction. So just like as a small aside on the graphs, I think there's the internal graph, the external graph. I also had one graph to the board. It's like, this is the optimistic, the realistic plan. If we're doing that, we're amazing. And then I had a slightly more, pushy graph that was like, we can probably do that. That's the plan that I went internally. But the goals and the targets and the bonuses were on the board targets. So I was always playing with this game a little bit because if the board is happy and the investors are happy, everybody should be well compensated.
And how many customers and how much revenue did you get to on this rise before acquisition?
Probably somewhere between 200-300 customers, if I recall correctly. We're about 200 people, double-digit ARR, and we had offices around the world, in the US, the UK, in Germany, in Singapore, in Australia. And the company was going great. We were selling to some of the biggest Fortune 500s. There's some interesting stories about that, which even though the company looks, they have like like again, from the outside, it looks great. From the inside, you're still fixing things as you go, and you're building the plane. You're building the plane as you're flying. And so I'm just thinking about some of these Fortune 500 customers. I remember some of the stories, like this scrappiness. I like this. I think maybe this nice entrepreneurial anecdotes, where we were working on a deal with like a Fortune 50, I think even, and we were doing a POC, and we were missing some integration to a tool that the customer had. They didn't know it yet, but they needed that integration to some tool that they had for the process. And I remember that we were going out for lunch, and I had like one of our engineers with me at the customer, and I was like, we're going to have this integration built. We're gonna distract the customer, take them to lunch. Can you build this in this live environment with the integration to the actual customer tool while we're at lunch? And I was like, I'll do my best. And we did this while we were having lunch, and I get a text.
That's
okay,
amazing.
It's done. It's working.
That is amazing.
So that's a lot of stories like that. I think is you can't be afraid of trying, because worst case you'll fail.
Amen. And that's what it takes. That's what it takes to build a business like this. And did you want to sell the company when you met Google? Where I think you mentioned you were raising around at that point.
Yeah. So this is also an interesting point, because you need to have optimism and conviction that the company can succeed either way. And I think the main message was, we're not selling, we're doing great. We were growing, up and to the right, but and of course there were like COVID at some point, and then you don't know what you're gonna do. And when we talked about the ups and downs, I think that was one of the biggest downs for me, by the way. Getting to the acquisition story is that we didn't know what's gonna happen, right? Nobody knew what's gonna happen. And I had to create this spreadsheet with different scenarios. And one axis was, how is the market gonna react and what do customers gonna do? And the other one is the burn, basically. Like I'm gonna have, basically I had like no change, plan A, which means this amount of layoffs and this amount of cuts. Plan B, significant layoffs and more cost reductions, etc. And like, this is the worst time in a CEO life, is to think about laying off people, especially when you're like hiring people because you're growing. That was a huge stressor. And in the middle of all that, my VP of sales quit. There's a different VP of sales. They also quit. You go through a lot of VP of sales. And there's also a lot of learning about that. And so eventually we took the medium option. We lay off a little bit of people, and we reduced salaries across the board for a couple of months. Then we saw where the market is going, and we corrected and so on. About the acquisition, so that was actually, the market was pretty good. That was towards the end of 2021. So kind of beginning of summer 21, the market was actually rallying, and we were doing great. Customers were already buying a lot again, coming out of COVID. And we were raising a Series D. The investors were like, okay, finally, things are picking up. We can build a big platform here, a big business here. And I was thinking, this could go both ways. If we're now signing probably, I think it was like another 70 million round, and we already have a couple of investors interested, kind of pre-term sheet. And I was thinking to myself, okay, if we close this and our valuation is going to be very high, you kind of need to know your market and who are the potential acquirers too, and what's reasonable, for a potential outcome. And I knew that would be great. If we could sell now, it would be great for a certain amount of money. If we raise another round, it is going to put us in a very, very rare acquisition situation. So basically, it's not a bad thing. It just means you have to build more, and we have to maybe IPO. I don't know if we will ever be, maybe we will, maybe we won't, but it's a much more difficult path to take. So I thought, and I think you need to be very conscious about making these decisions. Also, when you raise money, what valuations you take. There's a bunch of founders that came to me with their pitch, and they were closing around, which the valuation was very, very high, in my opinion. That also puts you in a difficult situation. If you don't execute amazingly, and like live up to the valuation, then you're starting a slippery slope where you have to do like a down round or or a flat round, and it's the beginning of the end. And you're also making yourself more difficult as an acquisition target, the higher the valuation is. So long story short, I was thinking I should probably test the waters a little bit before we close this round. I mean, the in real life, we probably had potential acquisition opportunity maybe every 12 to 18 months
A real one, like a due diligence.
A real one.
Yeah.
A real one. Again, I think if you're building a company that solves real problem and build a real business, there will be potential acquirers. It's not that they just show up and say, hey, sometimes I get this question, hey, so how was it like when Google called you? It doesn't work this way. Usually, you have to build relationships with these companies for a long time before that. So in this case, we had some relationship. We thought, okay, let's test the waters. You can't just say, hey, we're looking to sell the company, right? Because you're not really looking to sell the company, but you want to see if anybody's interested to doing something more strategic. So the way you do it is you build relationships in advance with the potential acquirers. We were also in a situation where the company was built on integrations to other vendors. So the way I would look at it is, what is the strategic level of the integration? We had like technical integration, maybe marketing, co-marketing activities that we do with this company, a co-sale that we can generate some revenue together, maybe an OEM level, like more strategic for an acquisition. So I kind of, from all of the 300 integrations that we had in a product, we selected 10, 15 that we thought are potential acquirers, but it's more because they really correlate to companies that can generate revenue with you. I mean, they won't be interested if they can't generate revenue.
A strategic buyer.
A strategic buyer.
Yeah.
So, because in the history of the company, there were a few buyers that came and said, hey, we want to buy the company. I mean, it's not exactly how it came to realize, right? We had an OEM or we had some partnership. And we went through the process and we even negotiated the deal, like the price. And then when it came to the board of the acquirer, the deal fell through. Because we had two potential acquirers where the acquiring company was owned by a private equity. So we thought this is strategic, but the owner of the acquired company couldn't justify the multiples for a strategic acquisition. A strategic acquisition, you want to get like 20, 25, 50, X you can get. It doesn't matter. Like, they don't care about the price.
I mean, are these incredibly disappointing moments when you have, like, you think you're done with the deal, everything's approved, it just goes to the board, and then you get the phone call, hey, it's not going through?
You can't imagine. I mean, you can imagine.
I can imagine. I've been there, and it sucks. It just sucks.
It happened like 6 times. But that's, I think, also something that you learn that you can't. You have to first have like the main road is you build a company, and then there's maybe outcomes that could be possible. And you need to make sure that you allow these opportunities to happen. Yeah. Like, you need to build it in a way where you have these relationships and they can happen, but you can't rely on them. You have to build a company that's sustainable. And you kind of have an exit strategy when you start a company. It's like, I'm going to start a company that will be acquired by this company. It's not feasible because it's so slim chances that these acquisitions will fall through, will actually go through. You need to have the right people with the right strategy in the right market that are there for enough time, that have the budget, that there's no other company that they're going to acquire. There's so many things that have to align that you have to believe and build, but maintain the opportunities. And that's why I was saying that I had the kind of business development team report directly to me and have this like 10 to 15 potential revenue-generating strategic partners that also potentially are acquirers. I manage the relationship with them personally. So whether there could be an OEM or some co-sale to generate revenue with them. And then when I was going to raise money and I was going up and down Sand Hill Road, I would also reach out to those partners and I say, hey, you know, I'm in town, you want to grab coffee? This is something that I would do any 3-4 months anyway. So it's not like you know, for them it was usual. And we try to, you know, and I, how long do I have?
We got to wrap up soon.
Oh, okay. So I'll wrap up, but I think this is a very interesting story where I think in building this relationship, it has to be something where these potential acquirers, they see the value and they kind of constantly, it's a drip campaign, right? You don't like, hey, I'm this company, I can be great if we mash our products, it will be great for your customers. They're doing so many other things, you know. I feel like I almost dripped it over a year, 2 years maybe, you know, with these 10 to 15 partners, where every time we closed a joint customer, even if they didn't do anything, I would send an email to the head of product, head of engineering, and I would say, hey, great work, we collaborated with your sales team, and we closed this customer, we have, you know, this joint value, or you had this competitor in the account that we managed together to, you know, kick out of your account, and I would keep dripping this, you know, emails, messages, you know, and in coffee conversations to be top of mind and to make sure that they kind of know about the value of the company.
This is gold. Just everyone, like I've been through this process and I've been acquired and I've also wanted to be acquired. And what doesn't happen is you're at the end of the line and you make a phone call because you really, you know, you want to sell your company and you know, try and build a relationship then. This is about long-term drip campaigns. I love that terminology for this process where you've identified the people that you're already partnered with, or the people that are on your vision board of who you want to buy you, and you slowly build a relationship. You slowly grab coffee every time you're in town, even if you're not going to town, say that you're going to town so that they say they'll have coffee, and then you get coffee. And you just keep doing this time and time again, and by the end of it, you get acquired by Google for $500 million. Maybe not everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, I felt like in this case, I was like setting the dominoes, you know, and like I spent the time while building the company and running the business to also set some dominoes. And then when we were raising the Series D, that was almost like a compelling event. And it's like any other deal that you work on with a new customer, with a VC, right? You need some sort of a compelling event. You need some sort of a driver to make them, you know, get out of their seats because they're busy doing a million other things. So I was doing these Starbuckses, you know, in the Bay Area, saying, hey, we're doing great together. We have these joint customers. And I always had the list that I prepare in advance, you know, which are customers that we have the same accounts with this particular partner I would talk to. I would say, you know, this customer, and tell some real stories, and say, we're doing great, we're doing amazing. We're also raising a round now, just mentioning it and seeing how they react. Long story short, I mean, I can elaborate a lot about this process, but we had one of these partners, not Google, who were starting to say, hey, you know, maybe we can do something more strategic, maybe an OEM. We spent some time there talking, all the way up to the CEO, and they said, okay, we want to do something more strategic. Nobody says acquisition, but we kind of knew, and it went that path pretty quickly, because they didn't want us to close the round, and then the company become too expensive, etc. And then with that, you know, that's the first domino starts falling, and then with that, you take that intent and you drip it to the others, and you say, hey, this is not our plan. We're raising money. We're building companies going successfully, but there are some conversations happening that I think, because we have a relationship, you should know about, and you see how they react. So it's like slowly heating up the loop, basically, and then one thing leads to another, and slowly it amplifies, and we got another vendor interested in this and saying, you know, basically that makes them think it's going to be taken off the table. Maybe around. Let's dig in. One thing led to another, you know, and Google was also interested because we had some relationship and we were working actually on an OEM, and you know, from there it took about 4 or 5 months until the deal was closed.
How much was the acquisition?
How much?
How much, yeah?
You can Google it.
$500 million by Google to turn your company essentially into their platform for cybersecurity.
Yeah, so basically Google is a very strong internal security, kind of selling cloud compute, GCP, and so on, but they weren't in the market of enterprise products, selling enterprise products. That was their kind of like entrance into enterprise security, selling enterprise products. So that was the first acquisition into that. With our product, joined with some product that they were starting to build internally, but didn't have enough momentum. That together really created the momentum. We were in Israel their first cybersecurity office. Now obviously they're growing. I like to think that with acquisition is the continuation of that momentum, but we were the first acquisition that they made into the enterprise security market.
A little round of applause for that journey that we just heard about. So I just want to wrap it up with one final question. I talk about this concept of high five energy. It's like when you lean into what you want to do in life and you do these behavior shifts of doing what you love, paying it forward, talking about it, building your mentor group. Basically, like most of the themes you talked about, how much magic was part of your journey where you were leaning in so hard you wouldn't give up, the acquisition fell through, you just kept going, and then it just worked out in your favor?
I mean, I think if you just keep going, you're allowing more chances for an opportunity. Basically, I mean, you need to keep building, keep solving real problems, keep having the right relationships. And again, you can't just shoot in all directions, right? You have to be very conscious and focused on which are the relationships that you think there's a feasible outcome from them. Even not for me, this list of 10 to 15 were not to get acquired necessarily. I mean, I knew that they could lead to potential acquisition, but they were to generate revenue and scale our go-to-market. Like if one of these partners, like Google, could OEM our product or have a joint go-to-market or some cross-sell, is going to open so many doors for us and going to shoot our revenue through the roof. So for me, it was like, we have to build these right relationships. The other acquirers were also ones that, potential acquirers, were also ones that we had a relationship with, some OEM, some cross-sell agreement with something, or the beginning of something, and that failed, that fell through. And they were all learning experiences. Some of them generated actual revenue, but no acquisition came out of it, until one of them did. So I think you have to keep trying and making sure that you have the right potential relationships, because it won't just come out of thin air. I mean, unless you're building something that's so, especially in enterprise B2B, it's not viral, I mean, in our space. And I always like to tell, I have an experience of N equals 1. So I have a specific experience. Everybody has different paths. Everybody have different ways that they take to reach different roads to reach the similar goal. That was just the one I went through. And I think in enterprise security, you have to build a lot of relationships with the partners, customers, potential acquirers, because they're not just going to see you on TikTok and want to acquire the company or something like that.
Just got to go all in.
Time check.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you to the KINN.